insights and to leverage for insights back into decisions. Now we're going to move from the insight conversation with one of our analysts in Forrester to a real-world customer solution, in this case, very specifically around digital, and how the Mark Cuban companies leverage the managed cloud to help them manage the spikes, both planned and unplanned, that occur with the Mark Cuban e-commerce offerings. And to do that, I will introduce our Director of Digital Sales, Adriana Bustamante.
Me like you right now. I don't know if you get a man or not.
At my household is somewhat of a big deal. My better half, James, and I rarely agree on the same thing. Yes, you might find me on the sofa watching some Housewives or Scandal. The season finale is tonight. I know it's a thriller, I hear. And perhaps James has told me that I'm better than the television that I watch. But, what can you do? There is a small handful of shows that we like to watch together, and one of those is Shark Tank. I am a Shark Tank junkie. And while James is yelling at the television, thinking that the judges are actually listening to him, I am usually in full anticipation mode for who is next to step in the tank, because sometimes I'm in the know. Rackspace Digital has had the unique opportunity to partner with Mark Cuban companies to help brands and businesses get ready for these Shark Tank moments. Today and this morning, it is a treat. We will be able to peek behind the curtain and get some pro tips. Their challenge is to prepare for high traffic events after appearing on Shark Tank. The solution is Rackspace for Digital and our Rackspace Managed Cloud. Let's check out some more on Shark Tank and Mark Cuban companies.
I'm Michael Johnstone with Mark Cuban Companies. Mark Cuban Companies is essentially Mark Cuban's portfolio that includes all of our early stage investments, the tech startups, and all of the companies that go through Shark Tank. And my area of focus is technology. So I've been with Mark for 3 years, and in that time frame we've dealt with I think 32 Shark Tank companies. We've probably seen 80 companies come into the portfolio in that time frame. That's a lot of high traffic events to deal with. I think for us, we're trying to solve any problem and every problem that they have. A lot of times it's technology. I mean, my focus is helping them to solve all of their technical challenges. Most of these companies have a basic website. Maybe they're using some open source platform for their e-commerce, and they're hosted on shared hosting somewhere, which makes sense because they're doing 10 to 100 sales a week if they're lucky. Some of them have no website when they come to us. The night the show airs, they'll go from a few visitors to 80,000 concurrent connections in a couple of minutes. They're not prepared for that at all, and they need a lot of guidance on how to survive that. Those companies go from very little in sales to hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes in just a weekend. The night that a company airs on Shark Tank is a pivotal moment in that company's life, and downtime really is not an option. Keeping the website up is what makes that a win. We use Rackspace quite a bit. I like Rackspace because of the managed services that I get alongside the hosting. I mean, there are a couple of companies that can provide robust server or cloud infrastructure. There aren't many or any that I know of that will hold my hand and watch over the companies along the way. We've had really great success. Rackspace has come through on a lot of occasions in a really short time frame with the cloud infrastructure, so I keep going back.
Pretty incredible, huh? It is a privilege and honor. Please welcome and join me in giving a round of applause for Michael Johnstone from Mark Cuban Companies. Thanks.
Well, thanks for having me here today.
I only agreed to do this if Rackspace would make me look cool in the intro. And I'm not sure they made me look cool, but I know they made me look cooler than I am. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. So I'm here to talk to you about high traffic events and how we handle those. I think I scooped myself in the video, but I've done about 32 companies through Shark Tank specifically. Each one of those is an individual company with their own problems, and we have to prepare each one to make sure that they're ready for that high traffic event. So before I get started, I wanted to just give you a little bit of my background. My name is Michael Johnstone. I started a company about 13 years ago, did business process automation on one side, digital marketing on the other. Most of the revenue came from the business process automation, and 13 years ago, digital marketing was a website and an email campaign. Over the years, that's grown into a lot of other stuff. About 6 years ago, I started a tracking business. We did fleet management for mid-sized companies. Not large like a UPS, but well, like if you own a plumbing company, you want to know where your drivers are if they're speeding. And I was able to sell that about 4 years ago. 3 years ago, I did some work for a company that Mark invested in, and met him through that. We hit it off, and he asked me to come in-house. And for the last 3 years, I've been working with Mark's portfolio, the early stage startups. I spend some of my time on deal flow, and I spend some of my time as an in-house advisor for the companies. For a lot of the portfolio, it's just it's a quick answer, a direction on something, a place to go, an introduction somewhere. But for the Shark Tank companies, we get a little bit more involved in actually supporting them, especially on the technology infrastructure. Just give you a little bit of background on Mark Cuban companies. We have a fairly large portfolio. If you have heard of Mark Cuban, you know he's very active, early stage investor, very active with the startup scene, and active on Shark Tank. We do a lot of deals in a year. I think on the website we probably have around 100 portfolio companies listed. And there's more going on behind the scenes all the time. My focus is the early stage companies specifically. So Mark's got the Dallas Mavericks, he's got Cyberdust, he's got Access TV, Landmark Pictures, or Landmark Theaters, Magnolia Pictures. He's got a lot of things going on, but my team works with just those early stage companies. And there's about 10 or 12 people on the team. We round out a number of areas that those companies will need help with, from financial analysis, advice, accounting support, sales support, and then technology. The night Shark Tank airs, it's a huge night for those companies. We know that if we prepare, these companies will be ready for going from relative anonymity to major fame. In that one night, they'll go from being unknown to being seen by 8 million people, and we want to make sure that they're ready for those sales. We want to make sure that they're ready for distribution agreements. We want to make sure that they're ready to capture that business. Everybody's going to see them on the show, but everybody's going to go look them up on the internet. I think the one thing that Shark Tank definitely has captured is that second screen experience. Everybody watching Shark Tank is also on an iPhone or a tablet or on their computer, and they're checking out those companies. They want to see what's happened since they pitched on the show. Maybe they want to buy the product, but we know that we're about to see a big traffic boost, and we know that we can launch these companies. If we do it right, if they deliver on everything that they need to do on the business side, we can grow them in an instant. So the night the show airs, this is a screenshot from one of our companies. See, we go from flatline. Traffic, most of our companies will see maybe 100 visitors a day, 100 visitors a week. It just kind of depends on the company. And within 1 or 2 minutes, the traffic will just jump. In this case, up to 70,000 concurrent connections. The 72,000 people in 1 minute all hit the website at that one time. Most of these companies come to us, they're just not prepared for that level of traffic. It's different. Even preparing for that level of traffic on an ongoing basis would be different than preparing for a spike that's going to hit you at one moment in time and interact with your site and hopefully buy product. sorry, I'll just point out also, because this will be important later, it tapers off over the weekend. We'll sustain that traffic all night, we'll sustain it, and then we'll sustain a new level going forward. But if we do it right, they'll do a lot of sales. We can go from, I've definitely seen companies who've had hundreds of dollars in sales do hundreds of thousands in one weekend. That's if their website stays up. If the website goes down, if the website's not ready, if they can't ship, if the product isn't ready to ship, those kinds of things, they'll all hurt. So we want to avoid that. The way that I do that is the cloud. I think that's the only solution at this point. Back in the day, all we had was physical servers. I'm not sure what we would have done because we can't build 50 servers and have them sitting around for a month before the show airs, and we can't tear them down on Monday. That business model doesn't work. So the cloud is really the only way that we could survive this. In our case, a lot of times we get about 2 weeks notice before a show airs, so before we know an actual date. So we have to be able to perform quickly, and we have to be able to scale up quickly. And so the cloud is the only solution. We use Rackspace. I think, with those 32 companies, at least a dozen have been on Rackspace during that time frame. Everybody's got their own infrastructure. Some of them are going to be on a hosted store, so they're not responsible for their technology, but the ones that are, they need to be somewhere with a robust cloud. And Rackspace has been a great partner for us in that respect. I think we use pretty much everything Rackspace offers. I've got companies on cloud sites, companies on cloud servers, companies on dedicated servers. I've got companies using a hybrid of the dedicated and then the cloud for bursts. Cloud DB. We use cloud files for pretty much everybody with Akamai CDN. It's a really important part of preparing for the show. And if there's something I'm not mentioning, we're probably using that somewhere too. They really provide a lot of the features that we need, and I push on it. It's there, we need it, and I try to make sure all of our companies execute on all of those. I, for a long time, was trying to figure out how I would describe my approach to the companies. Unlike if I was in a single business and I focused on that one company all day long, we would have a plan, a project plan in place. Here's what we do every time we have a new high traffic event. Unfortunately, the nature of my business is that every company is new. Everyone has different implementation, they have different software, they have different plugins. Some of them have sliders, some of them don't. Some of them are on WordPress, or some of them are on Magento, some of them have their own solution that they've built. But every time, it's completely new. What I've ended up with, I think a playbook is the best analogy. For me, it's like if this, then that for high traffic events. If you're on shared hosting, then we've got to move to cloud servers or better infrastructure. Shared hosting is just not going to cut it. If you're on a content management system, we have to make sure that you have cached all of your pages, at least all the pages that you can. We want to check all the plugins that you have. If you're on one of the ones that we see regularly, like WordPress, Magento, we'll come in and I'll look for specific plugins. There are specific ones that I know work well, specific ones that won't. There are themes that are very high performing, and there are themes that are a huge drag on performance. So I just start going through that and I start assessing the company. Things I like to look for are the team itself. Does anyone on the team have any experience with high traffic events? What level of knowledge do their developers have already? Is it just software? Is it just the website? Do they know servers? Do they know networking? Their hosting company, I like to know what kind of skill set the hosting company has. I have been with companies who were on dedicated servers, but with a company that had not seen this kind of scale in traffic. The hosting company had not seen it. And that's, I don't want to be the one that they learn on. I'll say it that way. When it comes to the website itself, I always want to make sure that we check the page speed. A lot of times, pages load very slowly, especially for a company that hasn't been doing much business and may have built a website themselves. or had a heavy hand in putting it together. They just start adding things. It's easy to get plugins. It's easy to get a feature that they want that way. But in concert, all of those plugins slow the website down. My initial target's usually like 4 seconds. If the page doesn't load in 4 seconds, then that's got to be a high priority item. If it loads in 4 seconds, I'll come back to it. I'd love for it to be at 3. But so I start to assess that. I look for the amount of files that load on the home page. We're looking for the size of the images. And so as I churn through, the team, the hosting, the software itself, then I can start to lay out a plan. And for me, planning is very much like using a Franklin Covey planner, which when I talk to startups today, especially the younger ones, have no idea what I'm talking about. But Unisys was a big proponent. I worked for them a long time ago. I stuck with a Franklin Covey planner as long as I could. Went digital eventually, but I still see everything in A, B, and C priorities. Right? So A being the things that you absolutely have to do, and they come before everything else. B tasks are the ones that are important, but they come after your A tasks. And C are the things that would be nice to do if you have time. In my experience, I never get around to the C-level tasks. I keep a long task list, and I always found that the C tasks would just go forward day after day, and then 3 weeks later I would give up. But in terms of the high traffic events, I lay them out the same way. If you're on shared hosting, it means you're on a server with a bunch of other people. So that server has limited capacity, and you're sharing it with others, and you can't customize the software on the server to prepare for the show. It's not going to survive. It's not going to survive a small amount of traffic. It's definitely not going to survive 70,000 concurrent connections. So that's an A-level task. That has to happen no matter what, because anything else you do is not going to be seen if you don't get that done. If you want a new slider for the homepage, you want some kind of graphic that says you're going to be on Shark Tank or that promotes a new product that you have, that's valuable, but it's got to come afterwards. For me, making sure that the website can survive is number one, and then marketing is number two. Once you get in the swing of things, you can kind of run in parallel, because usually your graphic artist is not the same person who's moving your infrastructure, but if you have to pick and choose what you focus on that day, that's how I work through it. As I do each one, I like to test. I like to test each individual task, and I think that's really important. I try not to do 4 changes at one time and then test, because it's hard to know which ones worked and which ones didn't. It's hard to know, did I speed up the page because I moved to a different server, or did I speed it up because I made the software better? I need to know measurably where my gains were and where I should spend more time. And after I do 2 or 3 tests, I come back to my plan and I reassess. Which A tasks can I cross off? What B tasks are now more important? Maybe I make them A's, and just reshuffle until I get to a place where we're comfortable. Once we're comfortable, then I move on to those C-level tasks. Those tasks like add-on marketing. I think there's the essentials of marketing and sales that you want to have happen immediately, and those become important in your project plan. And there are additional things that would be cool to do if you had some time, maybe a better graphic, maybe some other updates, and I come back to those later. I think the details matter a lot. The way I like to explain this to people is, if you're driving 5 miles an hour down the street, the aerodynamics of your car don't matter a lot. You can have an antenna ball, you can have your college sports mascot displayed proudly on the grill. You can do all kinds of things. But when you're moving at 200 miles an hour, you don't want an antenna ball, you don't even want an antenna. You don't want to have your tires underinflated, you want them perfectly inflated. You want to make sure that your alignment is correct. All of those tiny things, they tend to seem negligible because they've been working. You get 1,000 visitors at your site, everything seems okay, you think everything works and you're happy. When you get to 70,000, stuff starts breaking. Everything that you put on your site, your servers have to sustain. Maybe that means you add 3 more servers because you're just trying to buy your way out of it, but that's always an exponential problem. So anything you can do to smooth it over, you should. And keep in mind that you don't have to live with it forever. When One thing I encourage CEOs to consider is making adjustments for that night and that night only. Maybe you love having 4 images that rotate on the home page, but maybe for one night you can live with just one because it cuts the amount of data that has to be sent by 75%. Maybe it's important to focus on that one sales pitch. And you can come back on Saturday and put it back. The beautiful thing about digital marketing and the websites, just what I always promoted to my clients, is you can come back and change. You can launch, you can change it tomorrow. If you regret that, you can change it the day after. You can open it up and change it again next month. And so I consider this night a specific moment in time, and you have to be strategic and plan around that. You don't have to live with it forever. That means you can both run a special that's only good for that weekend and then take it away. It also means you can make changes in appearance or infrastructure and take those away on Monday. Just like the cloud. We wouldn't live with the cloud forever. I mean, with 50 servers going, but for the weekend, we definitely want it. I always take a minute to focus on sales. I think CEOs are always focused on sales first. It's basically make sure the tech works, but really let's talk about how we're going to market. And I always try to redirect that conversation a little bit. I mean, both have to happen. I think that for people focused on the technology side and people who come at it from the technology side, sometimes you get caught up in the tech itself and you don't give as much weight to the sales side as you should. And the risk to that is you can actually help a CEO be more effective with their marketing and make smarter decisions if you engage in that process. For me, when I look at a website, any landing page, whether it's a home page or a special promotion that you're running, I consider it a sales funnel. Anybody who's done sales before has seen it, you're moving people from lead to prospect, and then a few of those people get the quote, and a few of those people actually buy and become customers. And the same is true with your website. If you bring people into a landing page, that landing page needs a goal. It is not enough for that page to just say hi to everybody who's there. That page has to get people to do something. My focus is usually on the landing page, you draw people in. It's got to be some kind of captivating pitch, something that makes people chuckle, something that gets them to want to learn more. Then they click through, they learn more about the product, and on that product page, all you're really trying to get them to do is add the product to the cart. I mean, that is the goal of that page. There's really no other reason to do it. A lot of times you get sidetracked in sort of ancillary things, but all you want is for them to click that button. Sometimes that means a big red button closes sales, and it may not look as good as the really creative way that your artist first dreamed up to do it. But sometimes you make those compromises because the purpose of that page is to close sales, and you've got to test that, figure it out, and do it. And then you move people to the shopping cart, and then you make them check out. And the reason why I walk you through all of that in detail is I think that it is very important leading up to a high traffic event that you know that process is working. If you have any amount of traffic ahead of time, you want to look and see how many people land on a page, how many people click through, and how many people get to the end. Not because you want to know the start and the finish, how many people did I close, but you want to know how many people am I moving at each step and which step is failing. If you get a ton of people on the first page, a ton of people on the second page, and then everybody leaves with product in their shopping cart, there's a problem there. Maybe it's shipping, maybe it's the amount of time they're going to have to wait to get it. Maybe it's just a clunky checkout process. But you want to look for that, and you want to fix it ahead of time because you don't want to figure it out the night of the show. So at some point, you got to go for it, right? I think the one thing I learned, aside from a lot of experience with the tech, is deadlines. Shark Tank has definitely changed my definition of a deadline. I've always been somebody who was really concerned about delivering on a promise, but I used to have an easygoing kind of response when a CEO or a director of some product group would say, we'd like to finish this by July 1st. Actually, I'm maybe going on a golf trip that weekend. July 4th would be great, something like that. Can you deliver? That's one kind of deadline. But for us, it's like Friday night, July 4th at 8 p.m., you're going to air on national television in front of 8 million people. And that's going to happen, right? Like, regardless of whether you're on a trip, regardless of whether you're ready, regardless of whether you've added that extra slide that you want, it's coming. We've got a little Apple store with 100 people in it, and we're about to cram 70,000 in there. It's not going to work. We got to move. We absolutely have to move, and we have to move quickly. So I'm always mindful of that deadline, and I like to make sure the night of the show that I have a couple things ready. I know who's responsible in each group. So at the hosting company, who's our dedicated resource that night, who's our contact. With the developers, who's our dedicated contact, who's going to be on the job and making any changes as necessary. From the company, I want to know who my contact is. Sometimes it's the CEO, especially in a small business. CEO, founder, owner, they're all the same person. But sometimes they have a marketer or they have somebody on staff who's more technic savvy, and it'll be that person. And for me, I always know, Mark is always one of my contacts as well. Hopefully, the only thing I have to tell him is how great it's going. But that night, I sit down and we watch. I think as that time is approaching, I try to stop all changes. Unless something is literally broken and not functioning, you got to call it quits, because the risk in changing at the last minute and introducing a problem is too great. I won't say that we haven't changed things at the last minute, because we have. I won't say that we've always been ready, because sometimes it's been definitely down to the wire. Sometimes we've had to change plans and approaches, with just a day or two to go. But as much as possible, you should cut off changes. You should not add anything to your task list in those last days. You got to let it ride, and just make the best of it at that point. And if everything comes together well, you will have success. That night, I'll be on the phone, giving some people updates about how much money they're making, about our traffic numbers, about how great we are, about how great the team is, and patting ourselves on the back. If you don't hit that mark, if you run into problems, it's really important to just take a deep breath and fix it. Even in those high traffic event moments, the one thing I've learned is you can recover. If you're down for 20 minutes, life is not over. If you take a deep breath and you let people fix it instead of wanting to talk about why they weren't prepared for whatever just happened, usually they'll fix it quickly. And the rest of the night still delivers a ton of sales. I think that's really important as a leader, you have to stay calm, because no one else can do their job. They already feel the pressure. They already know what's going on. You've got to let them do it and just support them on it. And then on Monday, we can just check in and see how great the sales were and start figuring out how we can deliver. How we can deliver the product that everybody just purchased. I did want to mention, I worked with Rackspace to put together some of the lessons learned, from some of the events and some of the companies, and that'll be coming up. I want to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate it. I appreciate the attention and the time and the opportunity to be here today. I'd like to thank Rackspace for everything that they've done for us. They go above and beyond a lot, and I appreciate it a lot. If you have any questions, I'll be around the rest of the day. I'm happy to talk. Thank you.